for any good plan, you've got to get the word out, and everybody needs to be at the table.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie McMichael, Executive Director of Movers for America, and this is Short Fuse, where we break down the future of military moves, federal contracts, and all the innovations that are shaping it. Today I'm joined by Cheryl Garcia, Senior Vice President at US Bank, to dive into the landscape of DoD contracts. So, Cheryl, thank you so much for hopping on and being our guest today. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm absolutely honored. Thank you. My background prior to joining US Bank 21 years ago was in the household goods industry. So I started out as an entrepreneur at a very young age, not knowing better, just jumped right in, learned all about it,
Yeah,
and very passionate about it. For me, growing my company, the biggest challenge always was cash flow as a small business. And so there came a point in my life, I had a my father passed, and I didn't work with him, but he was my only mentor, and it made me realize that I wanted to be part of a larger organization than just
yeah.
being an entrepreneur. So I joined the
Mhm.
bank, and I joined to start the household goods program.
Oh, wow,
And
I didn't know that.
yes, and I'm super passionate about what we do. US Bank is a third-party payment system for the Department of Defense, and we have literally transformed how payments are made, both in terms of for the government as well as for the carrier.
So, what we wanted to dive into today a little bit is everyone's favorite topic, right? We've been talking about the global household goods contract for, 8, 9 years now. And now we're in this really interesting phase where, the contract has been canceled and we're all looking towards the future of what's coming next. And one thing that I think at this point in time would be good to reflect on a little bit is what are kind of some of the lessons learned from the global household goods contract? And I'd love to hear your perspective. US Bank has always been there throughout this whole program, and you've seen, obviously, in your time, so many changes.
We really appreciate the opportunity. I really appreciate the opportunity, both from you as well as the Joint Task Force, right?
Right.
I think this is the approach that they're taking is spot on in terms of, okay, they're great idea, great potential, and though there were issues. So now's the
Yeah.
time to step back and figure out what are those lessons learned. I think there's quite a few actually. We have had the opportunity to share some of those thoughts and ideas as we've been involved for many, many years in the program, both
Hmm.
on both sides, right? In terms
Right.
of as the third party payment system, as well as I mentioned, my own perspective. I think first and foremost is that it's critical to align the contract with market reality. And
Right.
and when this program started, what was so exciting about this was really transforming the program to
Hmm.
improve the warfighter experience, right? That's what it all started with. And it
Yeah.
started with really getting revenue to the curb, which is something that I am passionate about. You can't
Right.
grow your company without cash, and it's
Yeah.
something that I totally believe in and always have. That's what brought me here to the bank, and what
Uh-huh.
powers me every single day
Yeah.
is how do we get cash to those that need it to grow their business, to bring capacity, and all of those things. I know everybody
Right.
thinks they're special, right? Everybody's business is complex but this one
Yeah.
really kind of is. I mean, this is a
It
quality
is.
of life issue. There's a lot involved. It's not for the weak of heart by any means. It's a
No.
super hard job, and it's super hard to find, good people to do good work. But when you do, those are outstanding. So I think the first lesson learned is figuring out how to really look at the realities of the market, align that with the contract. And bigger than that, I would also say too, we're kind of seeing this overall in government is instead of prescribing the how, really focus in on the why. right? And
Right.
making sure that those realities are taken into account. So that's the first piece. And for me, I think, speeding that revenue to the curb is really critical. And as we look back at GHC, uh, that wasn't necessarily the case. And that was a big concern, right? It's just that entities need to be able to have the cash flow and be able to, make payroll and achieve those bottom line goals for their companies. So I think that's a really important lesson is just really understanding the market, whether that's in
Yeah.
household goods or anything else.
Initially, when it rolled out, that was a big, the North Star was we want to improve quality to the service members. And then we also wanted to, like you said, make sure we get more revenue down to the curb. And that was where we all, where everything started off. I mean, let's be honest, like the household goods business model, it has more layers than a lasagna. I feel like there are so many players and they all play a very important role. When DoD attempted to do it the first time is, maybe we didn't quite get all the way down to the folks that really needed it, right? The drivers, the labor, the ones that really work hard for that 3 to 4 month period to do all those moves.
Absolutely. And the front lines are what matter. The front
Yeah.
lines matter for the warfighter, and the front lines matter in a household goods move. You've got
Yeah.
to take care of the people, you got to take care of the equipment. All of those things have to be present. And then, of course, in peak season, then you throw on top of that, constrained capacity no matter what, because
All the
families want to
time.
move when kids are out of schools. I think, when we talk about capacity too, I would say the other piece to that is making sure that there is capacity and preparedness, really understanding
Hmm.
who is doing the work, how much equipment
Right.
is coming, who are those folks, and really being able to verify that is really important too. And I know, over the years we've had different models in the
Yeah.
household goods business. I mean, we've had situations where I know when I was in the business, I had my own letter of intent. Then that
Uh-huh.
we had a period of time where that kind of changed. Then we've had move managers. So I think the industry is adaptable. It's just that we
Yeah.
all need to understand, where is the capacity coming from? Who are they? And are they able to actually do the work and deliver when
Right.
you need them?
I totally agree. I mean that capacity during peak season is just so important, and finding the quality capacity. I think that is a good lesson that I think hopefully industry and the government has kind of learned together.
Yes. And I would say, the other aspect is really anticipate and mitigate implementation challenges. So when you think about the beginning
Right.
of any program, you really kind of need to get in and figure out what's the worst thing that can happen and
Yeah.
how are we going to deal with it. But you've got to anticipate what those challenges will be and have those mitigation plans. So I think
Yeah.
as we go forward, really understanding those and coming up with a good contingency plan so that way everyone can react sooner, right? How do
Right.
we make those adjustments and make changes in the program sooner rather than later so
Right.
that it can be a win-win-win for change?
Yes, like anticipating, hey, what are our contingency plans? That helps the movers too be able to make their plans for peak season and how they plan for, okay, how much seasonal labor do we need to bring? Do we need to invest in new warehouses, trucks? I mean, it helps everybody all around.
Absolutely. The next area is balancing innovation with stability. It's
Yeah.
amazing to me that in today's day and age, it's been many years. I've been at the bank now 21 years. So it's been a bit since I was out in the field, driving a forklift or what have you. But, I think really understanding that stability versus innovation is really important. And it's hard to believe, but even in today's day and age, there's so many exciting things, right, in
Yeah.
terms of technology, and whether
Right.
that's, whether we're talking about electronic inventories versus paper inventories. And in this day,
Yeah.
we wouldn't think it to be the case, but those things are really important in just understanding how you balance those things because change is exciting and we all want to change and adapt to new technology. And though we all also have to balance that with the stability of the program. How are people communicating? How is the information getting from one to the other? Who's
Yeah.
thinking ahead? How are you sharing that and keeping everything stable? And I think for me, that takes us really into, communication. Um,
Yeah.
for any good plan, you've got to get the word out, and everybody needs to be at the table. That
Yeah.
can be uncomfortable sometimes, right?
Yes.
Sometimes we may not want to hear, someone who has a differing opinion or approach, but
Yes.
ultimately, that is the best way to be successful, is that
Hmm.
those voices and those skeptics, having them in the room, understanding what those fears, concerns, capacity issues, what have you, and truly coming up with that mitigation plan is key. And then the communication, I think, ultimately is making sure that everybody really understands, okay, here's where we're at, here's where we're going, and here's where our challenges are. Now, how do we all come together to address those challenges and then quickly resolve them so that we can move forward? What that means for a lot of change initiatives is that we may end up doing things a little bit different than what
Yeah.
we had initially thought, right?
Hmm.
And I think that's really key as we see, um, just really the change overall in government contracting as we move forward here in terms of just understanding what are we trying to solve for versus how we're trying to solve for it. And then that always comes out with a better outcome, regardless of, what the solution is that we're talking about.
That's something in a like lessons learned from GHC is yeah, like we might I think at some point they got a little lost in what is our North Star, and what are we trying to achieve. And I think that while it's always improving the quality of service for the service member, I think as we move to this next iteration, I think really holding on to that tighter than maybe what we have in the last couple years. And um, my hope would be that yeah, whatever decisions get made, that they really stick with that. And there's so many companies out there that are innovating and finding really great ways to make the process better for service members. So finding a way to let those new and exciting technologies come into play would be really it'd be beneficial for everyone, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, as we're starting to see changes with the FAR rewrite, the initial
Yeah.
redrafts right now, they're eliminating 50% of the language. That's huge. And I think it's not just what it says, but again, back to the fundamentals of what is it that we're trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve a
Right.
quality move. We're trying to make sure that there's capacity. We're trying to make sure that revenue is getting to the curb. As long as we're all continuing to look at that and be flexible in how we get there, I think that's going to be huge. And I'm super excited as we see some of those changes coming into play within the government, across the government, and all programs right now, is looking at, what are those commercial best practices, and really challenging, challenging why do we do it this
Right.
way, why is it stated this way, and what is trying to be accomplished, not just, was always been that way. I am so grateful as a taxpayer, and I am so grateful that
Right.
the government is my customer. I am
Right.
so grateful that they're taking this approach.
Yeah.
Um, and ultimately, it will benefit everyone, but and at the same time, protecting taxpayer dollars, right? I think
Right.
you can achieve all of those things by really reframing around the why and the outcome.
Yeah, no, completely agree. It's such a great high level view of all of this. So I wanted to see if there are any, final thoughts that you wanted to leave us with, or just musings on what the future holds.
Well, I'm really excited and so grateful to be a part of this, Katie. I've always
Yeah.
enjoyed working with you. And,
Yes.
for so many within the industry, I've always been so grateful to work together. I don't want to date myself. That's pretty easy to do the math sometimes. But, some of these folks, we've all grown up together and we've been
Yeah.
through the challenges and we have seen the changes. And I am extremely confident in the resiliency of those that are committed to serving the warfighter.
Yeah.
And I'm extremely excited about where the government is headed and just look to continue to be a part of it. And I encourage everyone to share your thoughts and ideas. If you stick to those fundamentals about the why and those contingency plans, by all of us providing more feedback and insight, I think ultimately the service member is going to benefit with even improved moves in the future.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And for everyone tuning in, thank you for listening to our inaugural episode. And we will be back with more guests and more thoughts on the future of DoD moving.